And the reflecting pool that you've heard so much about, which is so incredible, it's been gruesomely vandalized by thugs.
Donald Trump was caught in yet another lie. But what exactly does the algae bloom on the National Mall have to do with the Epstein files? Well, I've got updates on both of those things. And I'm going to start with the National Mall. Rhino Liner, the company that made the product that Donald Trump used for the bottom of the reflecting pool, released a statement saying Rhino Linings is aware of the reports regarding localized areas of finish coat separation within portions of the Washington, D.C. reflecting pool rehabilitation project. Based on information provided to us by the project team, the condition is limited to isolated areas of the finish layer and does not affect the underlying waterproofing membrane. What you'll notice in that statement is there's zero mention of vandalism, blades, or anything like that. Nothing in that statement about vandalism. And frankly, the funniest part about all of this is that that coating was applied by a company named Greenwater. And a normal person would look at that swamp and go, man, we got robbed by a company named Greenwater. But the Trumpster fire over there looked at it and declared war. War on citizens. Even though the very people who made the product said it wasn't a blade, he went on Truth Social and announced that the pool had been, quote, gruesomely vandalized by thugs, that someone carved a 250-foot gash into it with a knife, and that sick and deranged criminals had poured corrosive chemicals into the water. So they started arresting people for touching the water. One of the people they arrested was an actual Olympic athlete, David Hearn, who simply leaned over and touched a loose flap of peeling paint. Paint that was already coming up on its own because that renovation failed. And he got slapped in handcuffs for it. He said, by the time I realized what was going on, I was already being put in handcuffs. And the charge for touching the government's failed swamp paint, destruction of government property, it carries a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. Now, we all pointed out correctly in previous videos that, hey, there's a 24/7 camera pointed directly at the pool. And Senator Durbin said, hey, show us the tape. Show us where there's a knife and a gash. Let America see it. And all we've gotten is a tiny clip of grainy footage of one person putting their hand into the water, and that's it. Because as of right now, without any real proof, Donald Trump has still arrested 6 people according to him. Yet actual court records show that only one person's been charged so far. And this famous 250-foot, 350-foot gash currently exists in precisely one location on Earth, Trump's Truth Social posts, with 6 arrests according to him. But here's why I've spent the last several minutes talking to you about that swamp. And this line has been uttered a few times in Congress, and it is damning, and it is going all over the internet. More people have now been arrested over the reflecting pool than over the entire Epstein files. Yep, they are going to cuff an Olympian for touching paint. They will wave around 10-year sentences over an algae stain. But the DOJ released millions of pages on Jeffrey Epstein's child trafficking operation, identified at least 10 more co-conspirators by name in these files, and the then acting Attorney General stood up and said, we do not have a case against anybody. 0 arrests. The president himself told the country to get on to something else with the Epstein files. But there is hope, because this week a federal judge, Emmet Sullivan, ordered the DOJ to stop hiding parts of those files. The lawsuit was brought by Katie Fang, and the judge called the government's excuses, quote, without merit. And among the things that the DOJ is finally ordered to do is to hand over the FBI's own interview notes with a woman who says that in the 1980s, when she was about 13 years old, Jeffrey Epstein introduced her to Donald Trump, and Trump assaulted her. That is some of the material that's been sitting there in the government's hands, redacted. That is what Donald Trump was protecting. The law that Congress passed says that you cannot withhold files like that to spare a powerful person from embarrassment. And yet the DOJ withheld those files anyway. And it took a journalist, a brave journalist like Katie Fang, and a federal judge to pry those files back into the light. And Katie's attorney said it about as cleanly as can be said. The government broke its own law to protect the very powerful and the very rich. That's the choice this administration's made, in writing in its own arrest logs. Touch paint on the Vanity Pool project, and they will move heaven and earth to put you in a cell. Yet get named in a child trafficking file, and they will move heaven and earth to keep your name blacked out. Their priorities aren't hidden anymore. Their priorities are the actual story. Because the survivors, they deserved the truth a long, long time ago. And the only reason any daylight is getting through right now is because some people have flatly refused to get on to something else like the president's telling them to. It's ridiculous. Hit the notification button and help keep the pressure on, because we are not going to let anyone forget about the Epstein files.